And I was doing well. I went from making 1,500 on each unit to 3,500. That's 6,000 to 14,000 within a matter of 60 days. But it wasn't until I discovered the subleasing strategy in 2019 that it really allowed me to accelerate my business. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Jorge Contreras podcast, a podcast for Airbnb entrepreneurs, for those who want to get to 10K a month in 90 days or less without owning real estate. And in this solo podcast episode, I want to really emphasize and go into the Airbnb strategy of subleasing and arbitrage and why this is the most effective business model to replace a 9-to-5. So the first thing is, I do believe that everyone's long-term goal should be to own as much real estate, because when you own property, you get all the cash flow, the appreciation, depreciation, mortgage paid down, and taxes, right? Cash flow is the monthly profit you make after all expenses. Your appreciation is the increase in value over time. Depreciation, which means you can write off the physical building over 27 and a half years. And what that does is it makes all or some of your cash flow tax-free. Then you have mortgage paid down, other people paying down your mortgage, only increasing your equity and net worth. And then finally, you have all the tax benefits of not just being a business owner, but there's even more write-offs, deductions, and advantages by being a real estate investor specifically. That being said, most people are not in a position to go straight into purchasing a couple of properties right now, all at the same time. And so the next best strategy is subleasing, right? This is where you rent properties, get permission in writing, and then launch it as a short-term rental. And again, the reason this is so effective is you don't have to put a down payment. You don't have to put closing costs to acquire the property. So you're really investing into the subleasing strategy strictly for cash flow. Again, you don't get the equity, you don't get the appreciation or the depreciation, but you are getting the cash flow. And this is the example that I can give you guys. If you have $50,000 to invest to start your short-term rental business, you can either buy one property, or with that same capital, you can sublease 3. And when I look at most of my portfolio right now, it's pretty much half of them are on the subleasing side and the other half on the ownership side. The cash flow, meaning the monthly profit, is exactly the same. It really doesn't change, maybe by $100 or $200, which again is not a significant difference. And so if the profit is not the same, why not triple your cash flow in the short term so that you can replace your 9-to-5 efficiently and effectively in the fastest way possible? Once you have 3 to 5 subleases and your capital is growing fast and you're accelerating that cash flow, then you can start buying property with that money. And that's exactly what happened with me. When I started my first 4 Airbnbs in March of 2017, I did so with 4 properties that I already owned. And I was doing well. I went from making 1,500 on each unit to 3,500. That's 6,000 to 14,000 within a matter of 60 days. But it wasn't until I discovered the subleasing strategy in 2019 that it really allowed me to accelerate my business. We went and launched 7 subleases in 3 months. It helped us accelerate our capital, just like I mentioned a few minutes ago. And that allowed us to go and buy a ton of real estate. And now we own a portfolio of $7 million worth of real estate, all single family homes. And we still have all of our subleases. So again, today our portfolio is pretty much 50-50 on the ownership side and on the subleasing side. So how exactly does subleasing work? So let me just explain this, right? Subleasing is the process where you rent other people's properties and then launch them on Airbnb. And again, this is 100% legal, and we always get permission in writing, right? By not getting permission, it's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when they find out and then they evict you. It is true that in all lease agreements, it says no subleasing allowed. That is only because the lease is intended for you to live in the property. Does that make sense? However, when you speak to the property owner or the manager about using their property and to as a short-term rental, we simply change the terminology to say, hey, Jorge Contreras has permission to use this property as a short-term rental, and boom, now you have permission in writing. You have a scalable and sustainable business model. Next thing I want to address is often people say, Jorge, why wouldn't the landlord do the Airbnb business themselves? Well, there's two different businesses here, right? There's the business of owning the real estate, and then there's the business of Airbnb. Just like when you go to your favorite restaurant, barbershop, or nail salon, the majority of the time, the people who own the business don't own the real estate. The people who own the real estate just want mailbox money. They don't want to be involved in that high intense operation, business. Same thing with Airbnb. The owners likely are 9-to-5ers in most cases who don't have experience hiring people, delegating, automating, building systems, building processes. They don't know how to automate the business. So in their mind, Airbnb is a lot of work, and it is a lot of work if you don't know what you're doing. Does that make sense? And so the owners don't want to be in that operation intensive business, based on their perception. And so they allow us to come in and rent their properties. We run the business and they own the real estate. So we are in it for the cash flow. They are in it mostly for the appreciation. So just wanted to answer that. The next thing that I want to mention, just a tip on the lease agreement, you typically want to get a lease agreement for 12 months. Now, if you wanted to go 18, 24, or 36 months, you totally can. But the typical lease that we start with is 12 months with the option to renew. The next thing, let's talk about out-of-pocket expenses. People always ask, hey, Jorge, how much is it going to take for me to launch my short-term rental business? So let's talk about some of those expenses. The first thing is the rent, right? The rent and the deposit is exactly when you live there as to when you're subleasing. You're going to pay whatever anybody else would pay, the fair market rent. So we are not paying landlords, more money because we're going to run a business. As long as we are the most credible person and we know how to present and we have a credibility stack that shares why we are the best option, they're going to want to choose us over anybody else. That's how it's been. I've been to properties where there's an open house and there's literally like 10 people who want to live in this property. I'm the only one who's not going to live in the property. And the landlord says, I want to work with you. You've got the best credit. You've got strong financials. You've got the references. You present yourself in a professional manner. You brought the application. You're the only one, Jorge, who brought an application, a copy of your credit report, and 3 months of bank statements. You're the only one who came prepared. Boom, I want to work with you. So again, the landlords are choosing me that I'm not going to live there versus these people who are going to live there. But obviously, I have a system in place in the Rio system that I've used to build my $1 million plus a year Airbnb business. And I've helped over 3,000 people. I've also been an entrepreneur for 15 years. I've been buying real estate for 10 years. And, I just have a lot of experience. I've also, I've invested in myself over $500,000 into coaches and mentors over the last 8 years. So you take all that experience combined, and that's why I just blow the competition out of the water. So again, going back to the out-of-pocket expenses, you're going to have your rent, a deposit, which is usually equal to the rent, furniture, right? That includes furniture and appliances in case all appliances aren't there. In most cases, they are. And then, of course, supplies, pictures, and decor. And typically what I like to do is I charge anything other than the rent and deposit. I charge everything else on my credit card. And then I use the cash flow from the Airbnbs to pay off the credit card. And as long as I pay everything off within 30 days, I pay 0 interest. And if I do take more than 30 days, then ideally I want to use a credit card where I get 0% interest for 18 months. And there's a lot of credit cards out there. We cover a lot of this stuff, in the Rio system. But the great thing about putting it on the credit card is that you build free points. Next week, I'm going to be on Ken McLeroy's podcast. He's the author of ABCs of Real Estate Investing. Robert Kiyosaki of Rich Dad Poor Dad gives all his money to Ken McLeroy to go and invest into apartment buildings. So anyways, I'm going to be on his podcast. And guess what? I'm flying into Phoenix next week on a first-class flight. And guess how much I had to pay? $6 of taxes. The flight was 100% covered by those credit card points that I build through paying for furniture, appliances, and things like that. The next thing and the last thing I want to cover for this podcast is what are the 3 objections that you need to overcome that are the most common when speaking to a property owner? The first one is they want to have reassurance that they're going to get paid on time every month, regardless of how your business performs. The second thing is they want reassurance. Again, these 3 are all about reassurance. The second one is they want reassurance that you're going to respect and take care of the property as well as your guest. And finally, they want reassurance that there won't be any issues with the neighbors. You see, sometimes these owners have been living in these properties for 5, 10, 20 years. Maybe now they're finally moving somewhere else, maybe out of state. They're going to rent out this property, and they want to make sure that all those relationships that they've built over the last decade or two, that they remain healthy. They don't want to cause any issues. With that being said, everybody, thank you for checking out this podcast. Make sure you guys also follow me on Instagram, on YouTube, and in the link in the description, there's also an ebook. And I do these free monthly live Zoom webinars that you guys can also find on my Instagram bio. With that being said, thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I'll see you guys on the next one.